And we are back. This is the Working Title Show with Zach Sams. I am glad you are here. It is summertime. It is hot, but we are in Dallas-Fort Worth, and that is the best real estate market in the country. This is the, well, I already said this is the Working Title Show, but this show is about real estate. It's about the economy. It's about Dallas-Fort Worth. It's about Texas and all the great things that are happening here. The negative news media, they take care of all the bad news. So this show is about talking about good things that are happening, you know, in and around Dallas-Fort Worth and in the great state of Texas. And so we're excited to be with you today. I have a great show in store with us and a great guest. Solomon Floyd is with us. Solomon, how are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, man. Like you said, it's hot outside. Thank God the air conditioning works.
Yeah, well, it works, but these lights, I don't know, man, they're going to heat up. So we'll hopefully we'll make it.
Hopefully.
We might make it. We might make it.
That's the plan.
Well, thanks again for being here, Solomon. So you're in the real estate business. That's how we met. And you know, this show we like to talk about what people are doing, like the great things that are going on. We like entrepreneurs. We like, you know, like people that are involved in the economy, right? So I know you're in the real estate business. And before we get to that, just tell me a little bit about you, how you got in the real estate business, and where you come from.
Yeah, so I'm a 20-something-year-old business owner here in Dallas, Texas. I'm originally from here, got adopted, and got sent to, you know, boarding school. Not sent, rather, but more like the opportunity to go to boarding school. And that opened my mind up. I grew up relatively poor.
So you're from Dallas.
Yep.
Right? And you were adopted, and then you went out of Dallas, I guess, to a school.
Yeah, I went out of Dallas to a school, but I'd come back periodically, so it's not like I'd really leave, but one of the things I noticed every time I'd come back was that there was always something new coming up, especially when I was in boarding school. It was just, we were literally just getting done with our recession, and I mean, things were starting to come back alive. And I could see that, you know, every time I'd come back home for some sort of break, it was like, here's this new building, here's this new apartment complex, here's this new thing.
And where were you coming back from? Was boarding school in like Oklahoma?
No, man, no. I would never go to boarding school in Oklahoma. It was boarding school in Maine and New Hampshire.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so all the way in the Great White North. And
but that was pretty.
It was gorgeous and cold, but I loved it. You know,
Yep.
I got to do a lot of things I wouldn't do here in Texas.
Sure.
And one of the things I realized was all these kids that I went to school with, their parents had money, and I decided to start my first business, and it was historical tours of Boston. I was like, this is the best. This is amazing.
Your first business was historical tours of Boston.
Yeah, historical tours of, well, really New England, but obviously everybody knows New England as Boston. Nobody's like,
So were you the tour guide?
yeah, I was the tour guide for weekends whenever I had time off. And then
So would you have like Wikipedia in your pocket and you'd walk around and like tell people what something is?
you know what's crazy was, you know, when I got adopted, my parents are from Boston. My mother's Italian, and she's just always spouting off facts about Boston. So I would just
Okay, so you had some inside knowledge.
Exactly. Word for
Okay.
word, I would quote my mom, and sometimes I would question some of the stuff that happened in certain places. But, you know, those facts made me a lot of money. And I ended up one day, one of the parents from my boarding school kids, you know, they asked me, do you have a bar crawl? And I was like, oh, no, man, I'm like 14. Why would I have a bar crawl? And so I'm like, well,
Is that like a pub crawl?
like a pub crawl,
Okay.
right? And so, you know,
That's a normal thing you ask a 14-year-old.
yeah, exactly. So I
Yeah.
was like, I don't have one, but let me make a few phone calls. So I call this bar down the street. Guy's like, yeah, we can fit it. How many people you got? It's like, I got 26 people. He's like, whoa, you got 26 people? He's like, well, I just so happen to own, you know, 4 bars down the street. So you send them all that direction. We'll give you guys, you know, half price drinks or whatever. And
So you're doing a tour of Boston, and then you're thinking, hey, well, let's just put a pub crawl into the tour.
it was never a part of the idea. Again, I wasn't old enough to drink legally. It doesn't mean it stopped me, but, you know, I was like, oh, I don't go to bars. So.
I'm sure you didn't.
Yeah, of course not. I was a great kid.
Yeah.
But I was like, why would I even think of this? So I got about 14 different bars my first year. By the time I sold my company, I had about 110 different businesses working with me. And I was essentially a Groupon for the greater Boston area. And then,
Wow.
And speaking of Groupon, they ended up buying my company from me before I graduated from
Groupon did?
Yep, they bought my company before I was in college.
Well, there is a success story. Well, that's exciting. So how do you get from tours of Boston with pub crawls, selling to Groupon, and now you're in real estate in Dallas? What happened there?
So, as I said, I was driving through Dallas as a youngin' and could just kind of see the pop-up of things. And when I joined the military, I don't know, I I got stationed somewhere and was just like, this place sucks.
So you're a veteran.
I'm a veteran, yeah.
Okay.
Just like
and
you,
what branch
man.
of the military were you in?
I was in the Air Force.
Okay.
I was in the Air Force and essentially just working with the counterterrorism operations teams here in the United States. And I was stationed in Wichita Falls, Texas, and I thought to myself, this place sucks. There's nothing here. So I decided to use my VA loan to buy my first home. Mm-hmm. And I rented it out when I got deployed.
Did you buy your first home in Wichita Falls?
Bought my first home in Wichita Falls.
Okay.
And that was a lot easier than I could have ever imagined, primarily just for the fact that the home was cheap and I could get a really decent rental rate from it.
Sure.
And I kind of thought to myself, well, I could replicate this 28 times. I'll be doing okay.
Did you buy it with the intent to rent it, or did you buy it for yourself and then ended up renting it?
I bought it for myself because I was tired of commuting from Dallas to Wichita Falls every day.
Sure.
And
yeah, that's a commute.
yeah, no, it turns out, I would much rather commute than live in Wichita Falls.
Right.
So I rented out the house. And
you thought, hey, you were cash flowing. And you thought, hey, there's a business model here somewhere.
exactly.
Right.
Well, and then it kind of went a little bit further from there. I was like, well, if these people like my homes, they'd like the businesses I'd start here.
Right.
They'd like the bars, the restaurants. And I thought, well, how do I get bars and restaurants to come here? I'll take the Dallas business approach. Mm-hmm. And I brought what was happening in Dallas to Wichita Falls, and that's currently where my company operates and how we do real estate.
Interesting. Well, I want to hear more about that, but we need to take a quick break. This is the Working Title Show with Zach Sams, and I have Solomon Floyd with me, who is the CEO and owner of Reunion Investments. We'll be right back. Thank you. And we are back. This is the Working Title Show with Zach Sams, and I'm glad you like my music. I think that's Nirvana who is playing that song. Is that right, Trey?
No, it is not right.
who was that? Hair 3?
It is Johnny Berglund.
Johnny Berglund.
Yeah, the name of it is Sad Modern Rock.
Oh man, he's good. I think he's from Wichita Falls, actually. Yeah, I think he's playing here this weekend.
That would make sense.
Yeah,
that would make sense. It fit.
All right, good stuff. So we're back, and he stayed through the break. Solomon Floyd is with us. He's our guest. He's the CEO and owner of Reunion Investments. So Solomon, we in the last segment we got a little glimpse into you. So from Dallas, adopted by a great Boston family, it sounds like. Did some boarding school up there in the New England area. Started some cool companies. Then got back to Texas and joined the military. You were with the Air Force, bought a home there, and then saw an opportunity after renting out that home. So now you are operating out of Wichita Falls. You have a business going there called Reunion Investments. Tell us about Reunion Investments. What do y'all do?
Yeah, so we're a full-service real estate investment firm. The basic concept there is that we help all of our clients identify real estate solutions and investment opportunities that we kind of create in certain markets. So our biggest product at the moment is our military rental program. And what that is through a housing contract with the United States government, we've been able to house military members in off-base housing in exchange for government rent. And as most investors would know, that's like the best way to possibly get rental income. And so our biggest focus is...
And that's because the government's paying you directly.
Exactly.
So you're not worried about collecting.
Exactly. So the government is paying landlords directly. Even if there's not a military member in there and the military member breaks the lease, government will still be paying those rents for those homes, which makes it sort of this...
So is the lease actually with the government or is it with the soldier?
The lease is actually with the government.
Okay,
and
that's
basically it's a big old master lease that extends to all military individuals stationed at that base. And a lot of people never realize this, but if you've never been to a military community, no one's like, hey, I'm going to go build a military base in Highland Park. Those people would never allow it.
Right.
So the idea there is that military bases are built in these places where it is cheap to build, therefore everything there is cheap, therefore there's not a lot of economic growth.
Right.
And
they're in the middle of nowhere, even if they're old posts, right, or bases.
Exactly.
Right, sure.
So, I mean, Shepherd in Wichita Falls has been there since World War I, old place. And the opportunity that we found for our clients was that these military individuals can't go to Oklahoma City and they can't go to Dallas. Those are the two most fun places surrounding that base. And so they can't go there, which means there's all this.
So they're like, what, 3-hour round trip?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, now you got to worry about whether or not you can get there, whether you're going to be back in time for post, whether something happens. There's a lot of stuff that goes into thinking about this. So the idea is we bring the economic surge from Dallas and Oklahoma City to places like Wichita Falls in a very small microeconomic sense. Basically meaning that we will provide you the real estate to be able to attract these companies. And then my company will work on actually bringing those small businesses to places like Wichita Falls, so that way you, the investor, are making the rent off of either a net lease or just a regular style gross lease.
Interesting. So in Wichita Falls, y'all are working with the military, Shepherd Air Force Base, to place soldiers that are at that base into housing, correct?
Exactly. Well, it's not just Shepherd we're working with. Right now, we're working with about 14 different military installations across the United States.
Oh, wow.
As my contract extends throughout the entire CONUS area. And for those of you who don't know, CONUS basically just means continental United States.
Interesting. So, but with Wichita Falls, so when I was in training, I was at Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, right? And I didn't have to live there. I lived on base, in training and whatnot. But in the example that I was, that was going to be my post for a certain amount of time, and I wasn't going to live on base. Is it typical in military installations to have a company maybe around that installation like yours to help soldiers find housing, or is it usually on their own to find housing when they're, outside of a, if they're not at Shepherd, they're at Fort Leonard, do they find their own homes, or is it typical to have a company like yours help?
So for the most part, military members are in charge of finding their own living arrangements. And again, like I said, most of the stuff they're going to find is cheap, run down. So their best option is to purchase a home and fix it up. And then when they deploy, get stationed somewhere else, they got to try to sell this thing. And now they're holding on to this property that, they got to either sell above market or under market and got to do something with.
So in the example of Shepherd, right, where y'all are working, soldiers there, when they're looking for housing versus having to do it on their own, is the base saying, hey, you ought to talk to Solomon over here and his company. They have housing for you that we've already got prearranged, basically.
One of the things we utilize heavily to, work with military members is going to be homes.mil. For those of you listening, definitely write it down. It's basically the military MLS for rentals, where you can post your rental, put it up there. The guarantee is, you're not going to always get a military member, depending on, what your property looks like, what it's renting for.
So if I own a home in Wichita Falls and I wanted to lease it, I could go to homes.mil and put it there?
Exactly. You can put it on homes.mil. It does need to be inspected by the base, and there are a lot of requirements to go through. But at the end of the day,
so there's some red tape involved, but that's the starting point.
And that's where my company comes in. If you don't want to deal with driving 2.5 hours to Wichita Falls to watch your rehab, to do everything else, my company handles finding you the property, selling it to you, the rehabilitation of the property up to the standards outlined in our military contract, and finding the military renter for you as well. So
you know what to do. You know how to find the house. You know how to rehab it. You know what the military wants to see.
Exactly.
So you know how to bring the house to that military code, so to speak.
It's just about it.
So it's a turnkey solution, basically.
At the end of the day, something that you, as an investor, don't have to really worry about.
Right. So if somebody's listening that's an investor and they're thinking, wow, man, I wouldn't mind, owning some, some homes in the Wichita Falls area and having soldiers rent those homes, and, I'm the landlord and I'm making a return on that. I mean, are you looking for people that are interested in doing those types of things, investing in these military installations that you're working with?
Absolutely. And the biggest driver for that is that a place like Shepherd Air Force Base and like Fort Sill, Oklahoma have these gigantic budgets. We're talking $5 billion plus just for disposable income. And the majority of that is going to go towards things like housing, like food, like car payments, whatever it is. That is the money that goes out. Only a few individuals are going to be entitled to that money, and that'll be the military contractors like myself.
That's very, very interesting. Well, it sounds like a great business concept. So is it easy to get involved with the military like that, or do you have to? Or I'm assuming since you're you're a veteran, had been in the Air Force, you had an in that type of situation.
I think it was a matter of you got to live it to see it to believe it, and you'll notice civilian investors invest in civilian markets, and military members will invest in military markets. You invest in what you know in, and for me, my ability to connect the civilian markets with the military markets has always been personal pride for me, in the idea that we can make life better for those who serve every single day.
So was your company that you created in Wichita Falls, as you saw, well, basically you bought a home and then you rented it out and you said, hey, there might be something here. So you recognized a need and an opportunity, and did you approach the military at that point saying, hey, I can do this?
No. So what happened with me was primarily dealing with friends, family, and their friends and family. And, I was doing what I was doing, getting up to 9 homes, and a friend was like, hey, I've got some money set aside. I want to do the same thing. So I did the exact same thing. And let him, put his home. I didn't have any of the contracts at that point, so we were purely just using Facebook, Zillow, whatever.
Were you using Homes.mil and stuff like that too?
So I wasn't using Homes.mil at the time, primarily because I didn't know it was a resource. Like, no one advertised.
I'm from the military. I've never heard of Homes.mil.
It's not a thing that's advertised, right? It's a way for those government contractors to pretty much monopolize the market, but it's open to everybody as long as you pass those inspections. So I didn't hear about Homes.mil until I got my government contract 5 years ago, and I was like, what?
This has been here the whole time?
This has been here the whole time? What do you mean? Spent so
Okay.
much money on Facebook ads.
Yeah.
And again, when it came down to it, these people were just regular investors who couldn't afford to put their money in a place like Dallas.
Sure.
Who couldn't afford to buy houses in Fort Worth, Austin, Houston. They needed something that was, $15,000 cash buy, $26,000 rehab, and could refinance at something like $85,000 to $95,000.
Right.
And
I think you make a great point there. There's probably a lot of people that wouldn't mind investing in real estate, but they think they can't because if they're in the DFW area, it's already hard enough just to afford a home yourself, right?
Yeah.
So that kind of takes investing in homes off the table. But
for the
you
most
find a
part.
market like most people, you said, hey, I bet Wichita Falls is a great real estate market. They're either going to be like, where is that? Or no, it's not. But when you throw in a military installation on there, it becomes a different type of ballgame, right?
Yeah, a lot of people think whenever I bring up Wichita, they automatically think Kansas, but then I say Falls, and they're like, where's that? But
There's a waterfall in Texas?
There's a waterfall. It's
Yeah.
man-made, and it is not impressive, but it exists. And the other best part about working in small places like this are the local incentives. Right now, Wichita Falls has this beautiful incentive program where you can revitalize downtown, and they will reimburse you up to 80% of your rehab cost that are included as safety cost. So that's fire suppression, that's elevators, that's emergency lighting. That's the whole 9 yards of making sure that these buildings get rehabilitated and investors can monetize from the get-go.
That is very interesting. Wichita Falls sounds like a cool place. I've always been a fan of Wichita Falls. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, we will continue with Solomon Floyd, CEO, owner of Reunion Investments.
Awesome.
We'll be right back. Thanks, Solomon. All right, and we are back. This is the Working Title Show with Zach Sams, where we are talking about the real estate market, DFW, Texas, the best place to be in the real estate business. And we are with Solomon Floyd. He's the CEO and owner of Reunion Investments. Solomon, just want to thank you again for being with us today.
Great to be here, man. Thank you for having me. This is amazing.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying it. So, man, what a great story you've had so far. I love what you're doing in Wichita Falls. I love what you're doing for investors, but also for, our military members. You're providing a service for them. So, I mean, that's great when you can do, when you can operate a business that serves the needs of not only our community, but our military community, but also serve your investors, and help them create a return, which some of them could be military members too, I would expect, right?
Exactly.
So with that being said, I know you got some exciting things going on. So tell me what you're most excited about, as we, move into the third and fourth quarter of 2019 and beyond.
Yeah, so one of the most like just the biggest thing that's ever happened is I partnered with a fund, CTX Capital Real Estate Fund, and we are essentially going and taking what I have to offer to these military members and expanding it on a much broader level. So we're going to be...
So hold on, let me stop you there. So for people who don't understand what a fund is, like explain that real quick. Like what does it mean when a fund comes to you, and why is that exciting for you? What is a fund, and what are they going to do for you?
Yeah, so a fund is basically a group of people who put their money together to be able to purchase real estate in such a large quantity and capacity that we can affect market change a lot easier and be able to produce way more revenue, way more apartments, way more small businesses, the whole 9 yards, and really focus on community redevelopment of military communities.
So this fund, basically, they recognized, hey, what Solomon is doing is a good model, and it's scalable. So we're going to put money behind you and scale bigger. Is that, in a nutshell, what happened?
That's exactly it. And basically, as the general partner, I kind of have the majority say of what goes on. Obviously, there's a board, but we work very hard and very close with the city, the military base, and my team to understand what investments go where and to see where we can maximize, again, the most good done in the community and the most returns provided for our investors total.
Sure. Exciting. So is the fund, are you just working with this fund in Wichita Falls, or how is that, what's the plan there?
So the goal of this real estate fund is to basically expand past our 14 markets that we currently operate into every single major military community. And that's, again, building residential, rehabbing residential, building and purchasing new apartment complexes, and again, focusing on providing better living, better conditions, and just a better quality of life for the men and women who serve.
So you're not only going to buy and rehab homes like you've been doing, but y'all are actually going to build new homes and new apartment buildings as well.
Exactly. The idea there being that if we can build it, then we can understand and control the quality that we provide to people. A lot of people like rehabbing things, which is fine, but if you can work with a blank canvas, you can design anything you want,
right?
And you can really focus on providing for the military members that need what you're going to be building.
And a military member, especially somebody that's in active duty, I mean, they have different needs than a normal civilian person, what they live, what they store, how they go about their daily lives. I mean, it's a different lifestyle, isn't it?
Exactly. And a lot of the time, it's definitely short-term leases. And I think that's one of the things that scares a lot of investors is, what if the military member deploys and leaves? In our case, you'll still get paid until the next renter gets into
because the lease is with the government.
Exactly.
Right.
So imagine doing that on a much larger scale. The current apartments that exist in places like these will be, at max maybe 100 units. So the goal is to build, not more than 100, but to build newer units that are 100 plus. So that way we can, again, maximize the efficiency and produce more for those people who are just, I don't know. If you've never been in the military, It's a grind,
sure.
100%. You get home, you just want to drink a beer, sit down, and turn
chill.
Off the lights.
Yeah.
It's pretty much as good as it gets for you.
And also, I would think the need to build is also just because of you probably need more housing. There isn't enough, right?
Yeah, there's not enough, but on top of that, it's kind of cheaper for us to build. We can get land for we literally just purchased 14 acres for, I'm pretty sure it was about $20,000. And we're going to build everything we could possibly want on there. It's going to be apartments. It's going to be some mixed use space. It's also going to be a little gas station there as well. So we're going to take as much of this land and capitalize on as many units on one piece of land as possible.
And I think that comment circles back to what we were talking about before, where people don't realize the opportunity in some of these military areas, because if you told somebody in Dallas it's cheaper to build, they'd laugh, right?
Mm-hmm.
But when you're in an area like a military installation that could be way off the beaten path, that land's going to be a lot cheaper than it is around a MSA like Dallas-Fort Worth, correct?
Exactly. And on top of that, I think, honestly, our price to build per square foot is cheaper. We're only spending about $100 per square foot when we're building new homes, new apartments, new businesses, new anything.
Yeah.
And that's a huge added benefit because now we can really put our money towards detail and attention to focusing on what is going to provide the most income for everything that we build.
Honestly. Are awesome, excuse me.
It's all good.
Well, Solomon, that sounds really, really exciting. So, what you're doing with the fund, that's with the fund's money, but you still have a need for outside investors that want to take advantage of these opportunities, correct?
Absolutely. And so we encourage people to definitely weigh your decisions, speak to one of our representatives, and kind of figure out what the best option would be. For those who want to be more active with their investments, owning the real estate is a wonderful tool, especially just because of the way that we've been able to manage it so far. When it comes to homes, we're bringing in somewhere around $1,200 to $1,300 a month on homes that are worth, like I said, $85,000, $95,000 total. And we're definitely outperforming that 1% rule by a lot for most of our investors.
Very interesting. So if somebody's interested and wants to learn more or talk to one of your people, how do people find you?
Yeah. So the easiest way, you can go on ReunionInvestmentsLLC.com, and you can definitely schedule a time to speak with one of our representatives. You can send us an email. You can just check out some of the things we've been doing. The other easy way too is every month that we hold a real estate and networking event. Real estate and cigars networking event.
Ooh, that sounds good.
Yeah, in the Dallas area. You show up, your ticket includes pizza, open bar, cigars, and we usually have about 2 to 3, sponsor speakers there to talk about some amazing things that are going on within the real estate community.
Sure.
On the military side and the civilian side, because, got to diversify as much as possible.
Absolutely. Well, that sounds exciting. And once again, that's ReunionInvestmentsLLC.com.
Absolutely.
And that's Solomon Floyd's company. And check that out. And if you have any interest or have questions, reach out, right?
Absolutely. Please do.
Awesome. Solomon, thank you so much for coming on. We've run out of time, but I want you to come back and tell us more and give us an update soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. This has been the Working Title Show with Zach Sams with Solomon Floyd, the CEO and owner of Reunion Investments. We'll catch you next time. Thanks. All right. Well, I want to thank everybody for subscribing to the podcast and listening today. I want to give a special thanks to Kensington Vanguard National Title of Texas. The show is sponsored by them, and Kensington Vanguard is a national title company with local people working here in Dallas-Fort Worth, specializing in commercial title insurance and residential title insurance. Kensington Vanguard will handle your escrow needs as well as your title insurance and your closing services. So you can go to the website at www.kv-lonestar.com to find our locations and our contact information. And we appreciate you using Kensington Vanguard National Title of Texas. We look forward to seeing you next week, where we will be talking about solar energy in the residential and commercial spaces. And we are really excited to hear about that. Something I wanted to know about, so I'm really excited to hear more about how that works. So we'll catch you next time on Working Title with Zach Sams. Thank you.